If your images are lacking impact, if you want to make them look more dramatic, in this video I will show you how to improve your landscapes, how you can add depth and beautiful color to your images. Coming up. Hi everyone, this is Kasia Zmokla. Welcome to my channel where you will always find photo editing training and educational videos to help you grow as an artist and photographer. So this is the second video from the series of 2. I have divided this edit in 2 parts to make it easier for you to digest. So in the very first video we have started with this image, this was the starting point, and we have ended up with this result. So if you haven't watched the first video, the first part, I want to encourage you to do so, because you will learn how to establish the basis for color grading and for luminosity adjustments that will add depth and drama to your images. So starting from here, as I've mentioned in the previous video, it doesn't matter if you have beautiful presets, if you have purchased beautiful styles, because no matter what color, no matter what beautiful adjustment you will apply, this is simply not going to work. So really the basic, the crucial skill that you should master is to establish the basis for further edit. So going from here, from overexposed image, from basically washed out, flat, not interesting image, you need to learn how to get from here to this point. And this we have covered in the previous video, link down below. Okay, so let me just remind you the plan for the edit. In the previous video, we have drawn super quickly those very simple lines. This was to indicate basically the idea, the plan. So the first line, this indicates my foreground. So everything that we can see here, this is the first plan, the foreground. And here I will be working with warm tones, with yellowy, orangey tones to make the foreground warmer, to bring it closer to the viewer and to create depth. So with background and far background, we will be working with complementary colors. Let's just move over to the color editor. So we will be working with complementary colors to create depth. So in the foreground, we have warm tones. If we take a look at the color wheel, we are working with yellows, orange tones. And to create depth, we need to move to the opposite side of the color wheel. And here we will be working with cool blue cyanish tones. And by injecting cool tones, by injecting blues, cyans into my background and to the far background, we will be able to create very strong color contrast. So that way we will add more depth, we'll add more spaciousness. And of course, we will complement this with luminosity adjustments. And a quick reminder for all of you who want to learn more about how to simply structure your edit, how to work with certain rules in mind, how to create the order. I have created a free masterclass, link down below. You can just jump over after you finish watching this video and you can learn more. I'm talking over there about creating fast edit. The masterclass is called 15-minute edit, and I'm talking about 3 steps. So this is 3-step workflow. So you can watch the free masterclass, link down below. Okay, let's move back to our edit and let's create the first mask. So the purpose of this mask will be to create the distinction between the foreground and the background. And if I take a look at my image, I can see that I can't use luminosity values because basically the image is quite evenly lit. I could possibly create the luminosity based mask for the sky, but this is not what I'm after. I want to have a mask that will just cover the foreground, and this can be done with color. So let's create new field adjustment layer, and let's rename this layer. Let's just call it color sample for mask. Okay, and on this layer, let's move over to our color editor, and with the advanced color editor, I want to sample in blues in the image. So I'm not going to sample in the yellows because they are quite scattered and I want to have selected the foreground, but I don't have an even color in the foreground. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to create mask for the blues for the whole background, and then I will invert the mask. Very simple. Okay, so let's just click again somewhere maybe here in those mid shadows, and let's create on this little icon to make sure that the whole saturation range is included. I might manually add here cyans. I don't want to add any of the yellowy orangey tones that are visible here. Okay, so this is our first step. Now all we need to do is to just move over here and click create masked layer from selection. So that way Capture One will calculate our mask and will create new layer. So as you can see here, new layer is added, and if I hit M, this will display the mask, which looks perfect. I will be working on the foreground here. Let's just rename this layer to foreground and let's invert the mask. So let's right click on the layer and let's select invert mask. So that way, super quickly, we have created mask for our foreground. We can hide the mask. Let's hit M, so the mask is not displayed anymore, but it is there. So I want to work with warm tones. I want to add more orangey tones. I want to basically change the temperature of the foreground, and I'm going to do this with white balance. So let's move over to our white balance tool and let's work with Kelvin and tint sliders. So by pushing my Kelvin slider towards the right hand side, I'm adding warmer temperature to the foreground, to everything that is masked out. So this affects the sky. Let's display the mask again. This will affect the sky and this will affect those parts of the mountains here, but that's fine, it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to go for quite a dramatic shift. Maybe this is just a bit too much, so I'm going to highlight this value and work with the arrow on my keyboard so I can be more precise. So you can see how quickly, how efficiently you can work with this if you know how to create pixel perfect mask, because this is really essential for this sort of adjustments. So that way we have made our foreground to stand out. We have created super strong color contrast even now before even touching the background. So we've been working on color for our foreground. Let's now add a little bit more texture. So I'm going to jump over to the exposure tab, and here in clarity, let's push our clarity towards something quite strong, around 50. It is definitely a good idea to take a look at your image at 100% magnification level. So now I can really judge how it affects the texture. And remember that this only affects the masked area. So those mountains visible here in the background, they are not affected by the clarity, and this further creates stronger contrast because we will have those super sharp, super crispy elements that rock in the foreground, and then the further we go away from the camera, the softer the image gets. So we have added clarity. Let's see, before everything was soft, everything was sort of similar. Now after just pushing clarity in my foreground, I'm creating this beautiful structure. Let's add a little bit of structure as well. So this will make the foreground stand out even stronger. I don't want to overdo this. So let's examine the image. Let's move it around. It is affecting this rock as well, and that's fine. So let's zoom in. So on this layer, on my foreground layer, I have been treating my foreground. We are ready now to move further and work on the background. So let's now create new empty adjustment layer. Let's just rename it to background. So on this layer, I will be treating everything that is here behind the foreground, all those mountains here, the mountains in the far background, and our sky. And the beauty of working with masks is that now I don't have to create separate mask. For this, I can just reuse the mask that was already created. So you can do this by right-clicking on the background layer and selecting Copy Mask From. So here I can just grab the mask that was applied in the foreground, and again I can invert the mask. So now if I hit M, I have perfect mask for my background. Okay, so having our mask in place, we are ready to start working on color on our background. And by the way, if you are getting value from my videos, I will really appreciate if you leave me thumbs up, if you consider subscribing to this channel, and if you leave me a comment under this video. I reply to every single comment under my videos, and I'm always super curious your feedback. So I want to know what is the most difficult thing in editing images in Capture One, what you want to learn. If I find that this can be beneficial for other viewers, for other people, I will definitely create a video on it. Okay, let's jump back to our edit and let's start working on color. So let's take again look at our plan for this edit. Now we are going to be working on the background. So we will be working on complementary colors that are complementary to those yellows and oranges in the foreground. So knowing this, having our mask in place, we can now jump over to our color balance tool. Okay, so let's change the cursor. We are in the color balance tool, and here I will be affecting only midtones. So I will be jumping right into the midtones here, and I want to add basically blue color. So let's move over quite strongly here, and let's go for clean, nice blue hue. Something like this, and I might be tempted to make it just a bit brighter. Okay, that's perfect. To my liking, however, this is a bit too saturated, so I'm going to jump over to my color editor, and again I'm going to sample somewhere in the blues, make sure that the whole range is included in my selection, and I'm going to go down with saturation. So something like this works better for me. I think that having those blues less saturated creates more space, adds more depth to the image. So now I can take the next step and work on my far background. Let's add new empty adjustment layer, and let's rename it. Let's call it far background. And for this one, I'm not going to be reusing the mask that was already created. For this one, I want a smooth, very soft selection for the mountains here in the far distance. So I might basically paint it with a brush, or I might use the linear gradient to create the gradient up from the top of the image and then erase it. I think actually that it will be faster to just create it manually, so we can do this very, very quickly. So let's pick the brush, let's set the brush hardness, should be 0, opacity 100, and flow can be around 50. That's it. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger, right square bracket. You can do this very dynamically without accessing the brush settings. Okay, so let's hit M, so we will see the preview of my mask, and I'm going to press and hold Shift on my keyboard. Let's actually make the mask, the brush, a little bit bigger. I'm going to press and hold Shift, and that way I will be able to just create a straight line. Okay, something like this, and here without the Shift key, a little bit more irregular line. So this is roughly the shape that I was after. What is important, I want to have included a little bit of the sky, so I can make the brush a little bit smaller, and one more time paint at the top, but with lower flow, just to make this transition very, very smooth. Let's go for E, eraser, and let's make the flow a little bit lower, and let's remove it from those rocks here. I will get better result if the mask will be bleeding in the rocks rather than if I had some missing pieces in the area that I want to affect. So we can remove it from here as well, just a bit. No, this is too strong, so I'm going to just go with way lower flow for the eraser and very smoothly just remove it from here. Okay, so this is my mask for the treatment for the far background, and here I will actually use again white balance. Why not? Let's just get the neutral cursor and let's find our white balance. So here I want to make the far background a little bit warmer. So let's work on this. I will push the slider towards the right, so that way I'm increasing the warmth. I'm creating color contrast between the middle background and the far background. So let's go even further. Okay, so I'm going to actually display the mask again and grab my brush with quite a low flow. I want to make this part included so the transition will be smoother. Otherwise it is visible that there is a piece missing. So since the tops of these rocks were already warm, it looks okay. Let's see, this is before, this is the after. So if you want to be more precise, of course you can work with brushes, you can work with eraser and adjust this area, but for the sake of this video I want to work quickly and I want to show you what can be done, what is possible with these tools. So again, let's just add a little bit more like this, so the tops of the mountain will be a little bit more warm, a little bit more creamy. So now we can lower the opacity value for this layer, so the effect will be more subtle. Okay, and I still want to revisit this part, it bothers me. So let's go for eraser and let's maybe do this with one movement going across like this. Okay, this is looking way better. So on this layer we've been working on the far background, so this is before, when everything looks similar in tone. So apart from those hills that are really far away, those, the mountain here and the one here in the middle, they are quite similar. But after applying again the temperature adjustment on my far background layer, I was able to create stronger contrast and I was able to basically make the far background brighter to push it away. So again, this is before, this is the after. It maybe is still affecting that part here a little bit too much, so you can be as precise as you want. The image is very dynamic, there is a lot going on, so you don't need to be super precise, but definitely having color shift like this is not helping. So let's paint a little bit more here. Okay, now I think it's fine. Okay, we are ready now to move over to the next step, where we will be targeting luminosity adjustments in our background, because we have made the foreground really strong. We've been working on color, we have added texture, we have made it really to pop, and I want to create separate layer for the background where I will be playing around with curves. I will add a little bit more contrast and this will affect color as well. So let's add new field adjustment layer and let's rename it to background curves. So on this layer we will be targeting our whole background, including the far background. So if we just grab the mask from here, from our background, we will be going in the right direction. So we are on our background curves. So for now I have created the field layer, so let's just clear mask. We have no mask right now. Right click, let's copy mask from background. So that way we have the mask and we are ready to start working with curve. So being here, let's find our curve tool and we will be working with RGB curve. So I'm going to do really classic S-shaped curve to add a little bit more contrast, to add a little bit of pop to the background, and to make the colors a bit more saturated. You can do this manually, or you can use one of the ready presets, so you can go for contrast RGB. So this created the classic S-shaped curve. Maybe I will remove this point, I don't need it. I want very, very simple curve, something like this. The highlights are maybe a little bit too bright. So this sort of curve works perfectly for this image. Let's maybe add a little bit more. Okay, let's see. This is the before and this is the after. The only thing I want to adjust here is to erase the sky, because I don't want to have this adjustment visible in the sky. Let's hit M. So this is the preview of my mask, and I just need to grab E, eraser. Let's go for high flow, and let's just erase this mask from the sky area. So I want it to be affecting my whole background, but I don't need it to make those bright clouds, those fluffy nice clouds, brighter, because then I will be basically going back to the square one when I had overexposed sky and when I've been working on fixing this issue. So that way, having all these adjustments in place after fine-tuning luminosity, after working with all the masks, after working on color, I'm ready to add few final touches to the image. So firstly, I want to add still a little bit more pop with clarity and sharpening. So let's add new field adjustment layer, and let's rename this one. Let's call it Sharpening. Capture One automatically applies sharpening to your image at the very first step when you just import your images from your memory card. So if we go to the background layer and if we go here to our sharpening tool, we can see the amount 140. So if I try to reset this, this will stay because this is the default adjustment. So if I want to have my image softer as a starting point, I can move all this to 0, so this will make the starting point softer. But basically, the choice that Capture One makes is working quite well. So let's reset, let's take it as a starting point. And remember that whenever you are adjusting sharpening, clarity, it is a good idea to look at your image at 100%. So let's zoom in. And now we are going to jump over to our sharpening layer, and here I want to add sharpening across the whole image. So the default 140 is applied to the background, and now I will be adding more on a separate layer. So that way, again, I will be able to fine-tune it. So this is too much. Let's go maybe for something around 140. You can see now how beautifully those plants contrast now. We have already added some clarity to the foreground, and now this creates this beautiful depth. The further mountains, this part here is super soft, super creamy, smooth. This is the aerial perspective, and then the closer you get to the camera, the closer you get to the lens, the sharper the elements get. So let's try to now add some clarity over the whole image as well. I'm going to go for something quite low, maybe around 14. If we need to, we can move back to our foreground layer and we can reduce clarity that we have set separately only for the foreground, because now it looks a little bit too much. So let's just move it just a notch to the left hand side so everything is more harmonious. So on our sharpening layer, we have added sharpening. We've been working with clarity to add more pop to the image, and the next thing I want to do is to just work on the sky, just a little bit. The only adjustment I want to apply here is to go towards negative value on highlights. just to make the sky a little bit darker, to link it stronger with the rest of the image. So something like -20 is more than enough. I wouldn't go further than this. This is already making the sky a little bit maybe even too heavy, so something around -12. Let's see before and after. Okay, and the very last thing I want to apply on this image is a custom vignette. I don't want to use the default vignette. This will basically create the elliptic shape, but this will darken the foreground, the sky. This looks just horrible. Let's create new field adjustment layer. Let's rename it. Let's call it vignette, and here we'll be working with radial gradient. This is super simple, super fast, and you can create your custom vignette without affecting the areas in the image that you don't want to affect. So let's just make the vignette a little bit wider. All I want to do with the vignette is to just darken the bottom of the image and a little bit sides of the image. So having my mask created, let's take a preview. So this is the preview of my mask. It is affecting the sky, so I want to make it higher. So this will remove my red overlay from the sky. Let's actually make the oval a little bit narrower, so I will have some vignette on the sides as well. Okay, I can always grab eraser and remove it from the sky if it bothers me. Okay, let's hide the preview of the mask, and now let's go for negative value on exposure. Nothing dramatic, just a notch. So I'm going to actually highlight the value and work with the arrows on my keyboard. Already with -0.2, I can see the bottom darker, and I'm not sure if I want to go further. I think that -0.3 is maybe a bit too much, so I'm going to go back and stay with the value -0.2. So that way the foreground creates this nice frame. We are sort of peeking through, we are looking over this rock formation. We have the view, we have the landscape unrolling in front of us, so we can see the background, we have seen the further background. And this was possible to create with our super simple few seconds plan. So by firstly indicating what is the first plan, what is the middle plan, what is the background, we were able to set the plan for this edit. So again, let's just see what was our starting point. This was the image that we have started working with in the first video from the series of 2, and then we have finished with this result. So this is the middle point of our edit. This is where we have started in this video. So from the basis, from the luminosities and basic color grading set, we've been able to move over and to create this final result. So thanks for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes, and don't forget to check out the free masterclass. It's completely free. You can watch it and you can learn in depth how to structure your workflow, how to create 3 logical stages, so you will be always covered. You won't be forced to jump from the step 3 to the step 1 because you missed something, because you messed up. So watch the free masterclass and leave me a comment under this video. I'm curious to hear your ideas for future videos in this channel. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the next video.